in a village where the full moon turns everyone into either lovers or lunatics. One greedy father decided to auction off his daughters like cursed real estate. "Choose any daughter you want," he bellowed. "Beauty, mystery, or, snacks." But fate, or a very petty moon goddess with a plus-size kink, had other plans. When the brooding alpha sniffed the lineup, he skipped the perfect princesses and grabbed the hand dusted in flour and zero tolerance. A giant wolfman in leather staring like he's seen the Holy Grail. But the Grail is a cinnamon roll. A curvy baker, mid-eye roll, spoon raised like a sword. The father fainting into his own mead barrel. Splash. Chaos. Frosting. Howls. One very confused squirrel running for its life. This isn't your grandma's fairy tale. And this is choose any daughter you want, the greedy father said. He took the obese girl's hand. Where true love smells like cinnamon and bad decisions. Coming now to your imagination. And yes, there will be casualties, mostly egos, and maybe one kitchen. Quick character backstories before we dive in, because knowledge is power, and chaos is funnier when you know who's who. Marge Thicket Whistle, our queen. Born chubby, stayed chubby, turned it into a superpower. Grew up ignored by suitors, so she learned to bake better than anyone alive. Her rolls can literally knock men unconscious with bliss, or rage. Secretly terrified of being alone forever, but she'd rather die than admit it. Favorite hobby, roasting people harder than her oven roasts bread. Weapon of choice, sarcasm plus wooden spoon. The Rafe Blackthorn. Alpha of the Midnight Fang Pack since he accidentally killed the last one in a who can eat more raw steak contest gone wrong. Cursed by the moon goddess to find his true mate or spend eternity as a garden gnome. No, really, she's got a twisted sense of humor. Terrifying to enemies, secretly a hopeless romantic who cries at puppy videos, smells everything. And I mean everything. Lord Barnaby Thicket Whistle III. Once a semi-respectable lord until he invested the family fortune in enchanted turnips that turned out to be regular turnips with glitter. Now broke, desperate, and convinced his daughters are his only ticket out of poverty. Loves mead more than his children. Sorry, kids. Catchphrase. It's not greed, it's fiscal responsibility. Arabella, eldest. The beautiful one. Golden curls, tiny waist, their weaponized fluttering eyelashes, spent her life winning village beauty contests and practicing dramatic sighs. Secretly hates corsets and dreams of running away to become a pirate. Thinks Marge is unrefined, but steals her snacks when no one's looking. Drusilla, middle. The mysterious one. Black hair, pale skin, collection of suspicious potions. Rumored to have hexed 3 ex-boyfriends into frogs. They're fine now, mostly. Actually just really into gothic poetry and black nail polish. Jealous of Marge's confidence, but would never say it out loud. If you're laughing, crying, or stress-eating carbs while reading this, hit that subscribe button like Marge hits a batch of dough. Do it now, or the moon goddess will make your next date sniff you like ham. Your choice. This Valentine's Day. Forget roses. I'd forget chocolate. Forget literally everything sane. Because the moon goddess looked at her dating app and said, maximum chaos, extra cinnamon, make it hurt so good. Moonmaw Hollow stank like wet werewolf and broken dreams. Same as every Tuesday. Lord Barnaby stood in his great hall, which was great only in the sense that it was greatly falling apart. Arms flung wide like he was about to hug the entire room, or maybe just surrender to fate. Gentlemen, ladies, wolves, whoever's paying, he bellowed. My daughters are available. Pick one, anyone. Arabella's got the face of an angel, Drusilla's got vibes, and Marge, well, Marge has buns of steel and buns of cinnamon. Take your shot. The stranger stepped in. Rafe Blackthorn looked like trouble wrapped in black leather and poor life choices. His boots left muddy prints. His eyes glowed faintly orange, like someone left the toaster on too long. Outside, 6 wolves sat in perfect formation, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Rafe sniffed once, sniffed twice. Then his whole face changed, like he'd just smelled fresh bread after 3 days of fasting. Barnaby rubbed his hands together. The blonde? The brooding one? Name your price. Rafe didn't answer. He walked straight past the 2 marketable daughters like they were furniture and stopped in front of Marge. Marge thicket whistle. Flower in her hair like war paint. Apron that had seen battles. Wooden spoon clutched like Excalibur. Currently mid-rant at a squirrel that had stolen her last pecan. Rafe grabbed her free hand, lifted it, inhaled so deeply his chest expanded like a bellows. Cinnamon, yeast, a little murder. Everything I've ever wanted. Marge snatched her hand back so fast his fingers made a cartoon pop sound. Did you just sniff me like I'm tomorrow's lunch special? Rafe blinked slowly. Wolf slow. You're my fated mate. Barnaby made a noise like a tea kettle dying. Arabella shrieked, But my hair! Drusilla hissed, This is an affront to ancestry and good taste. Marge looked Rafe dead in his glowing eyes. Then she snorted so hard a puff of flour came out. Fate's drunk. Also, you smell like a rug that drowned in pine sol. Go roll in a river before you start proposing eternal bonds. Barnaby tried. Sir, perhaps a misunderstanding. Rafe never looked away from Marge. Moon goddess doesn't do take-backs. Marge sighed like the goddess owed her money. Fine. You want this disaster? Earn it. She shoved the spoon into his giant paw. Kitchen. Now, if you're my so-called mate, you're kneading dough. And if you crush one single roll, I will end you with diabetes. Rafe stared at the spoon like it might bite him. Then he grinned. Sharp canines. Pure delight. After you, mate. Don't call me that yet, Rover. You haven't tasted my murder buns. She stormed toward the kitchen. Rafe followed like a very large, very confused puppy. The door slammed. 2 seconds later, a muffled boom. Flower cloud. A wolfish yelp. Marge's voice echoing. I said gentle, you oversized hairdryer. Barnaby hit the floor in full armor. Clang, wheeze, splash into yesterday's mead. Outside, the wolves howled like they were placing bets. And somewhere, the moon goddess popped popcorn. Welcome back, you glorious disaster magnets. If you thought the beginning was chaos, buckle up. But we're about to enter the kitchen. Where dough rises, tempers flare, and one very large werewolf is about to learn that helping is a 4-letter word. The kitchen door had barely slammed before the first casualty occurred. A mixing bowl. It didn't stand a chance. Marge stormed in like a woman on a mission to avenge every carb-deprived soul in history. Rafe followed, ducking under the low beam because apparently 6'7" alphas don't fit in peasant cottages. Rule 1, Marge snapped, already tying a fresh apron around her waist like battle armor. Touch nothing until I say. You break it, you eat it. You burn it, I burn you. Rafe looked around. Flour sacks, rolling pins, a suspiciously large oven that looked like it could double as a portal to hell. Or he held up the wooden spoon she'd shoved at him earlier like it was evidence in a murder trial. I'm supposed to... knead? Marge snorted. No, you're supposed to stand there looking pretty and useless. Yes, knead. Pretend the dough is the face of someone who's wronged you. Rafe's eyes lit up. I have many faces to choose from. Great. Pick one and punch it into submission. She dumped a mountain of dough onto the scarred wooden table. It landed with a satisfying thwump. Marge dusted her hands and stepped back. Your turn, big guy. Rafe approached the dough like it might bite. He flexed his fingers, claws half out, because why not, and plunged both hands in. The dough made a noise like a dying goose. Too much force. Way too much. Flour exploded upward in a perfect white mushroom cloud. It coated Rafe from ears to boots. But he blinked through the blizzard, now looking like a very confused snow yeti. Marge didn't even flinch. She just crossed her arms. Gentle, I said gentle, not rip the soul out of the gluten. Rafe sneezed. A tiny howl escaped mid-sneeze. Adorable if you ignored the fact that it rattled the pots on the rack. I don't do gentle, he growled, wiping flour from his eyes. I conquer. Conquer bread? That's your big alpha energy? My roles are supposed to seduce people, not declare war. She stepped in, hip-checked him aside. He barely budged, but it was the principle, and showed him, slowly, how to fold, press, turn. Like this. See? Caress it. Love it. Whisper sweet nothings if you have to. Rafe stared at her hands moving over the dough, then at her face, then back at the dough. I don't whisper, he muttered, or I growl. Growl at the dough. It likes that. Builds character. He tried again, this time slower. His massive hands that had probably torn apart enemy packs, now cradled dough like it was made of glass. The muscles in his forearms flexed. Veins popped. It was honestly ridiculous how hot he looked kneading bread. Marge caught herself staring, snapped her eyes away. Nope, focus. We're not here for your forearm porn. Rafe's mouth twitched. You were looking. I was checking your technique. It's still trash. He leaned closer, close enough she could smell pine, smoke, and now flour. Dangerous combination. Admit it, I'm improving. You're improving from catastrophic to mildly disastrous. Gold star. She flicked flour at his nose. He flicked it back. Harder. A mini flour war erupted. Marge laughed. Real. At belly deep. Then immediately scowled like she was mad at herself for enjoying it. Stop distracting me, mutt. We've got 3 dozen rolls to make before the village vultures descend for breakfast. Rafe paused mid-flick. Why so many? Because your dramatic entrance scared off my morning customers. They think you're here to eat them, or marry them. Either way, they're hiding. Rafe looked almost guilty. I'll fix it. How? By howling love sonnets at dawn? By buying every roll you bake for the next month. Marge froze. Spoon halfway to her mouth. She'd been stress-tasting batter. Don't judge. You're serious. I don't joke about food or mates. She studied him. Really studied him. Past the leather, the glowy eyes, the ridiculous shoulders. There was something earnest there. Something almost soft. Fine, she said at last. But if you're buying them all, you're eating them all. And if you get fat, I'm not responsible. Rafe grinned. Full fang. Challenge accepted. They went back to work, side by side, hip to hip, her hip, his thigh. Height difference was comical. The kitchen filled with the smell of yeast and cinnamon and something warmer, something that wasn't just baked goods, until the door burst open. Barnaby staggered in, still damp from mead, armor dented, dignity long gone. Marge, the wolves, they're eating the rose bushes, and Arabella's having a fit because her hair smells like wet dog, and Drusilla's brewing something that smells like revenge. Marge didn't look up from rolling dough. Tell Arabella to wash it. Tell Drusilla to chill before she turns someone into a newt again. And tell the wolves if they touch my herb garden, I'll turn their pelts into oven mitts. Barnaby wrung his hands. But the alpha, he's right here, Rafe said mildly, never stopping his kneading. And I'm busy. Your daughter is teaching me manners. Barnaby blinked at the flour-covered werewolf gently folding dough. Manners, Marge smirked. He's a quick learner, when motivated by cinnamon. Barnaby opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. The pack is gathering outside. They want to meet their new Luna. Marge's hands stilled. Rafe's hands stilled. The dough sat between them, quietly rising, like it knew things were about to get way worse. Marge looked up at Rafe. Luna? As in, queen of your furry cult? Rafe shrugged one massive shoulder. Technically. Marge turned to her father. Dad, get out! But out, before I bake you into the next batch. Barnaby fled. The door clicked shut. Silence, except for the soft hiss of the oven and the distant sound of wolves arguing over rose petals. Marge wiped her hands on her apron. Slowly. So, she said, your pack thinks I'm their new boss lady. Rafe nodded. They're enthusiastic. Enthusiastic how? They brought gifts. What kind of gifts? Rafe hesitated. A deer, 3 chickens, and a very confused-looking badger. Marge stared at him. Then she started laughing. Hard, tears in the flour laughing. Rafe watched her, confused, delighted, a little terrified. You're not running, he said quietly. Marge wiped her eyes, still chuckling. Not yet. But if that badger tries to steal my pecans, all bets are off. She poked his chest, right in the floury pecs. Finish those rolls, Rover. We've got a pack to disappoint. Rafe grinned again. Wider. And somewhere outside, 6 wolves sat in a circle, one holding a squirming badger, all wondering how the hell their alpha had ended up domesticated by a baker with a death wish and perfect hips. The oven timer dinged. First batch ready. And the real chaos? Just getting warm. Last time on our cinnamon-scented train wreck, Rafe Blackthorn, big bad alpha, terror of the forest, got domesticated by Doe. Marge turned kneading into psychological warfare. And the pack? Oh, the pack brought gifts, live ones. The back door of the kitchen banged open so hard it almost came off the hinges. 6 werewolves poured in like a furry SWAT team that had read the wrong address. First came Thorn, the beta, and built like a brick house with anger management issues. He carried a freshly killed deer slung over one shoulder like it was a designer purse. Next, Lila, tiny, vicious, red hair like a warning sign, held 3 flapping chickens by the legs. They looked personally offended. Behind her lumbered Garrick, the pack's strong, silent type, who was mostly just silent because he once ate his own tongue trying to impress a dryad. He cradled a very angry badger like a newborn. The rest of the pack filed in. Twins who communicated only in growls, an elderly wolf named Agnes who knitted scarves out of shed fur, and one very young pup who immediately peed on the welcome mat. They all froze when they saw Marge. Marge, covered in flour, apron splattered with batter, the wooden spoon dripping cinnamon glaze, looked up from the cooling rack like she'd been expecting tax collectors. Silence. Thick, awkward, furry silence. Thorn cleared his throat. Deer blood dripped onto the floorboards. Luna, he said, bowing awkwardly. The deer head bobbed with him. Marge blinked once. Slowly. Luna? She repeated. Do I look like I'm wearing a crown? Or fur? Or literally anything that says, I want to rule a pack of overgrown dogs? Rafe stepped forward, still dusted head to toe in flour, looking like a giant powdered donut with abs. Everyone, he said calmly, this is Marge, my mate, your Luna. The pack stared. The badger hissed. One of the chickens clucked judgmentally. Lila tilted her head. She's round. Marge's eyes narrowed to slits. And you're pointy. What we all have our burdens. Thorn tried again. We brought tribute, for the new Luna. He dropped the deer. It landed with a wet thud. Marge looked at the carcass, then at Thorn, then back at the carcass. That's a deer, in my kitchen, on my clean floor. It's tradition, Garrick rumbled. First words he'd spoken in 3 months. Tradition can go sleep in the barn with the rest of the livestock, Marge shot back, unless you plan on skinning, butchering, and turning that into stew right now, in which case, welcome to the team. The pack exchanged glances. Agnes shuffled forward, holding out a lumpy knitted scarf made of what looked like Rafe's winter undercoat. For warmth, dearie, she croaked. Winters are cold when you're not running on 4 legs. Marge took the scarf. It was surprisingly soft. Again smelled faintly of pine and old wolf. She wrapped it around her neck anyway. Not bad, Granny. You got skills. Agnes beamed, missing teeth and all. The pup, barely shifted, still mostly ears and enthusiasm, darted forward and dropped a half-chewed stick at Marge's feet. Marge stared at it. Then at the pup. Is this a gift? The pup wagged so hard his whole body shook. Marge sighed, picked up the stick, threw it gently toward the open door. The pup bolted after it like his life depended on it, straight into the chicken Lila was still holding. Chickens exploded into feathered chaos, feathers everywhere, clucking, howling. One chicken landed on Thorn's head and started pecking his ear. Rafe tried to help, grabbed a chicken. It flapped in his face. Feathers stuck to his flour coating. But now he looked like a yeti who'd lost a pillow fight. Marge watched the disaster unfold with her arms crossed. Impressive, she deadpanned. You've been alpha how long? 7 years, Rafe muttered, trying to dislodge a chicken from his hair. And this is your elite squad? They're enthusiastic. They're a liability. Lila finally caught her chickens. One was missing half its dignity. The badger, still cradled by Garrick, chittered furiously. Marge pointed the spoon at it. You, furry trash panda. If you bite anyone in this kitchen, I will deep fry you and serve you as an appetizer. Understand? The badger froze, then slowly nodded. Smart animal. Thorn wiped blood and feathers off his face. Luna. Call me Marge, she cut in. Or Baker. Or the woman who's about to feed you all and regret it. Luna makes me sound like I should be wearing velvet and giving speeches. Hard pass. Rafe stepped closer to her. Protective. Flour still falling off him like snow. They mean no disrespect. They mean chaos, Marge corrected, which I can handle. But if they're staying, they're working. She turned to the pack. New rules. 1. No dead animals on my floor unless they're dinner. 2. Wash your paws before touching anything edible. 3. If you want food, you earn it. Start with dishes, then firewood, then maybe, you get first dibs on the rolls cooling behind me. The pack stared at the rack of golden, glistening cinnamon rolls, their eyes glazed over, tongues lolled. One twin actually drooled. Agnes whispered, She's vicious. I like her. Thorn looked at Rafe. Alpha, is this allowed? Rafe shrugged. She's the mate. She makes the rules. Marge smirked. Damn right. She picked up the biggest roll, still warm, dripping icing, and held it out. To the first one who scrubs my sink spotless. 6 werewolves dove for the sink like it was the last lifeboat on the Titanic. Elbows, growls, splashing water. One chicken got dunked accidentally. Marge leaned against Rafe's arm, casual, like it was nothing. He looked down at her, soft, smitten, flour in his eyelashes. You're enjoying this, he murmured. Immensely, she whispered back. Your pack just became my unpaid kitchen staff, and they're terrible at it. Rafe chuckled, low, rumbling. Outside, the badger finally escaped Garrick's arms and bolted into the herb garden. Marge sighed. But I'll deal with that later. Rafe wrapped one massive arm around her shoulders. Gentle. Careful. They're yours now, he said quietly. Just like me. Marge looked up at him. Flour on his nose, eyes glowing soft orange. Don't get sappy on me, Rover. I still haven't decided if I'm keeping you. But she didn't pull away. Behind them, Thorn scrubbed so hard the sink groaned. A roll disappeared into Lila's mouth. She moaned like she'd seen the divine. The oven timer dinged again. Fresh batch. And somewhere in the herb garden, the badger was probably stealing basil. But the kitchen? The kitchen was full of growls, giggles, splashing water, and the smell of cinnamon so strong it could wake the dead. Chaos. Organized chaos. Marge's chaos. And Rafe. Rafe just stood there, arm around his mate, watching his terrifying pack get domesticated one dirty dish at a time. He looked stupidly happy. The moon goddess probably high-fived herself. We returned to Moon Maw Hollow, where the kitchen is now officially a war zone, disguised as a bakery. The pack is scrubbing sinks like their lives depend on it, because cinnamon rolls. Rafe is still covered in enough flour to start his own winter. And Marge? Marge is about to discover that fated mate comes with bonus drama, bonus in-laws, and one very determined badger who thinks her basil is 5-star dining. The herb garden behind the kitchen looked like a crime scene. Basil leaves scattered like green confetti, rosemary sprigs yanked out by the roots. One sad thyme plant lying on its side, clearly traumatized. And in the middle of it all, the badger. Fat, furious, her cheeks stuffed so full it looked like it was smuggling walnuts. Marge stepped out the back door, rolling pin in one hand, fresh-baked roll in the other. Priorities. "You little striped menace," she called. "That's my dinner seasoning you're murdering." The badger froze, one leaf dangling from its mouth like a cigarette. Marge took a bite of the roll, chewed slowly, deliberately. "I could deep fry you, or I could bribe you. Your choice." She tore off a chunk of warm roll and tossed it. The badger sniffed, eyes widened, abandoned the basil mid-chew, and waddled over like it had just found religion. Marge crouched, held out another piece. "New deal. You stop eating my garden, I feed you scraps. You touch one more herb, I turn you into a muff." The badger considered this. Then it sat on its haunches, its paws up like a tiny begging dog, and made the saddest chitter known to mammal. Marge sighed, dropped the whole remaining roll at its feet. "Fine, you're hired. Official bakery security. But if you bite Rafe, I'm docking your pay." The badger attacked the roll with the enthusiasm of a tiny chainsaw. Behind her, the kitchen door creaked. Rafe poked his head out, flour still in his hair, one sleeve rolled up, exposing forearm that could probably bench press a carriage. "Everything under control?" Marge stood, brushed dirt off her apron. "Just negotiating with the new intern." Rafe looked at the badger, now half buried in cinnamon roll bliss, and raised an eyebrow. "You adopted the assassin?" "He adopted me. Big difference." Rafe stepped closer. Close enough she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "You're good at this." "At what? Bribery? Wildlife management? Ruining my diet?" "At turning enemies into allies." His voice dropped, soft, serious. "At turning me into someone who needs dough instead of breaking necks." Marge felt her cheeks heat, blamed it on the oven glow leaking through the door. "Don't get mushy, Rover. I still haven't decided if you're house-trained." He grinned. Slow, dangerous, sweet. Before he could reply, chaos arrived in stereo. The front door of the cottage slammed open so hard the hinges screamed. Arabella stormed through the kitchen like a golden hurricane, curls bouncing, cheeks flushed, one hand clutching a silk fan like a weapon. "Marge, this is unacceptable." Marge didn't even turn around. "Which part? The wolves? The badger? Or the fact that you're wearing my good apron as a cape?" Arabella skidded to a stop. "The apron is irrelevant. The Alpha chose you. You, over me." Drusilla slinked in behind her, black dress trailing like smoke, eyes narrowed to dagger points. "It's an abomination," Drusilla hissed. "The moon goddess has clearly lost her mind." Marge finally turned, crossed her arms. "Or maybe the moon goddess has excellent taste and zero patience for drama queens." Arabella gasped. "How dare you?" "How dare I what? Exist? Bake? Get sniffed by a werewolf who clearly prefers curves and competence over corsets and complaints?" Rafe stepped between them. Casual, but the air around him crackled like static before lightning. "Ladies," he said quietly, "my choice is made." Arabella's fan snapped shut. "But father said any daughter, and I'm clearly the superior option." Drusilla added, "Statistically, mystique and poison skills are more valuable in a Luna than dough handling." Marge snorted so hard she almost choked on her own laugh. "Dough handling just bought your breakfast for a month, sis. What have your poisons done lately? Turned the neighbor's cat blue?" The pack, still elbow-deep in dishwater, started snickering. Thorne whispered to Lila, "She's savage." Lila nodded. "I'm in love." Arabella stamped her foot. "This is humiliating." Drusilla's fingers twitched like she was itching to hex something. Marge looked at both sisters, then at Rafe. Then she did the most dangerous thing possible. She smiled. Sweet. Slow. Terrifying. "Tell you what," she said. "If you're so sure you'd make better Lunas, prove it." Arabella blinked. "Prove it." "Kitchen. I now, both of you." Drusilla raised an eyebrow. "You want us to bake?" "No. I want you to survive one shift. If you can make it through breakfast rush without crying, burning, or cursing anyone into amphibians, maybe, just maybe, I'll consider stepping aside." Rafe's eyes lit up. "Marge." "Shush, mate. This is family bonding." Arabella looked horrified. "But my nails!" Drusilla looked intrigued. "Can I poison the scones?" Marge pointed the rolling pin like a scepter. "Aprons, hands, wash, now." The sisters stared at her. Then, miraculously, they obeyed. Probably because the pack was watching, mouths open, and the badger was now perched on a stool like it was judging the entire scene. Rafe leaned down to Marge's ear. "You're evil." "I'm efficient." He pressed a quick kiss to her temple. Barely a brush, but it sent heat straight to her toes. "You're perfect. Flattery won't save you when they inevitably set the oven on fire." Outside, the wolves howled approval. Inside, Arabella tied an apron over her silk dress and immediately got flour on her cheek. Drusilla cracked eggs with unnecessary force. Marge watched them both like a general surveying new recruits. And the badger? The badger just licked cinnamon off its whiskers and chittered happily. Breakfast rush started in 10 minutes. The village was waking up. Hungry villagers were coming, and two pampered sisters were about to learn that kneading dough was way harder than kneading drama. Marge cracked her knuckles. "Let the games begin." Rafe wrapped an arm around her waist from behind. "Need backup?" She leaned into him, just a little. "Always." The oven dinged. Round 2. And this time? The whole damn village was about to get front-row seats to the thicket whistle family meltdown of the century. If you thought sisters fighting over lipstick was bad, try sisters fighting over proofing times while 6 werewolves cheer like it's a gladiator match. Welcome to Breakfast Rush at Thicket Whistle's Bakery of Doom. Spoiler, nobody dies, but several egos get flambéed. The front bell jingled like it was having second thoughts. Villagers poured in, cautious at first, then bolder when the smell hit them like a warm hug laced with cinnamon heroin. Old Man Harrow, 3 teeth, infinite opinions, was first. He froze in the doorway, staring at the scene. Arabella wrist-deep in dough, curls wilting, one perfect nail already broken. She was crying. Quietly. Dramatically. Or Drusilla measuring cinnamon with the precision of a poisoner, muttering incantations under her breath. Marge directing traffic like a tiny, flour-dusted general. Rafe leaning against the wall, arms crossed, looking way too amused for someone who almost got set on fire 10 minutes ago. The pack scattered around the kitchen like very large, very hairy line cooks, Thorne flipping scones, Lila piping icing, Garrick silently chopping nuts. He'd already crushed 3 knives. The badger perched on the windowsill, licking glaze off its paws like a tiny food critic. Old Man Harrow blinked. Am I still drunk? Or is the Alpha needing pastries? Rafe raised a hand. Needed. Past tense. I'm retired from dough violence. Marge didn't look up from plating. Order up, Harrow. 2 rolls, extra icing. I pay first or I let the chickens loose again. Harrow slapped coins on the counter faster than he'd ever moved in his life. Words spread like wildfire, soaked in butter. The line snaked out the door. Villagers whispered, pointed. Filmed nothing because it's fantasy, but if phones existed, this would have gone viral in 30 seconds. Arabella cracked first. She tried to pipe a perfect swirl on a roll. The bag exploded. Icing splattered across her face like war paint gone wrong. She shrieked, dropped the bag, ran for the back door. Drusilla lasted 3 seconds longer. She burned a tray of scones because she was busy hexing the oven to feel remorse. Smoke billowed. The alarm, a very loud bell Marge had hung for exactly this reason, clanged like Judgment Day. Drusilla hissed, threw her apron on the floor, and stormed after Arabella. Unacceptable working conditions. Marge watched them go. Didn't chase. Just sighed and slid the scorched scones to the side. Scrap pile. The badger can have them. The badger chittered in delight. The pack didn't miss a beat. They slid into the empty stations like they'd been born wearing aprons. Thorne took over piping. Lila handled the register. She growled at anyone who tried to haggle. Effective. Garrick silently carried trays to the front like a furry conveyor belt. Villagers ate faster just to watch the show. One woman, Widow Jenkins, notorious gossip, leaned over the counter. So, you're really keeping him? The big scary one? Marge glanced at Rafe. He was now wiping down counters, sleeves rolled up, flour streak across one cheek like battle paint. She shrugged. He's useful, and he doesn't complain when I yell at him. Rafe looked up, grinned. I like when you yell. The widow cackled so hard she almost choked on her roll. Marge rolled her eyes but couldn't hide the tiny smile tugging at her mouth. The rush peaked, then slowed, then stopped. The last customer left with a bag of day-olds and a story to tell for years. The kitchen looked like a war zone. Icing on the ceiling, flour footprints everywhere, one chicken still loose and roosting on the rafters. Marge leaned against the counter, exhausted, triumphant. Rafe appeared behind her, slid both arms around her waist, chin on her shoulder. You did it. We did it, she corrected. Your pack isn't completely useless. He chuckled against her neck. Warm breath. Made her shiver in the best way. They're terrified of you now. Good. Fear is a great motivator. He turned her gently, looked down, eyes soft. Orange glow dimmed to something almost human. You're incredible, Marge snorted. Flattery after a breakfast rush? Low blow. Truth after a breakfast rush, he countered. You turned my pack into functional adults. You turned your sisters into, well, at least they left upright. Marge glanced toward the back door where Arabella and Drusilla had fled. They'll be back, probably with father and a pitchfork. Let them come. He brushed a streak of flour off her cheek with his thumb. Lingered. Marge's heart did a stupid flip. Don't, she warned. Don't get all tender on me right now. I'm covered in sugar and regret. Best combination, he murmured. Then he kissed her. Not dramatic. Not claiming. Just soft. Slow. Tasting like cinnamon and victory. Marge froze for half a second. Then kissed him back. Hands fisting in his shirt. Flour puffing between them like confetti. The pack politely pretended not to see. Thorne coughed. Lila elbowed him. Garrick turned his back so hard he knocked over a stool. When they broke apart, Marge was breathing hard. Okay, she said. Maybe you're not completely terrible. Rafe's grin was pure wolf. High praise. She poked his chest. Don't let it go to your head, or your fur. I still have to deal with the sisters, and father, and whatever curse you're under that turns you into a gnome if this doesn't work out. Rafe's smile faltered. Just a flicker. We'll deal with it. Together. Marge searched his face. You really believe that fate stuff, don't you? I believe in you, he said simply. Something warm bloomed in her chest. She didn't have a snappy comeback for that one. So she kissed him again. Quick. Fierce. Then pulled back. Help me clean up, Rover. Then we're hunting down my sisters before they convince Dad to hire vampire mercenaries, or something equally stupid. Rafe saluted with a flowery hand. Yes, ma'am. Outside, the badger was napping on a sun-warmed rock, belly full of stolen glaze. Inside, the pack started sweeping, grumbling, but doing it. And somewhere in the village, Arabella and Drusilla were plotting revenge over tea. But for right now, the bakery smelled like sugar, victory, and the tiniest hint of something real, something that might actually last. Until the next disaster, anyway. Last time, breakfast rush conquered, sisters defeated, temporarily. Rafe kissed Marge like she was the last cinnamon roll on earth. The pack is now dishwasher certified. The badger is basically employee of the month. But peace in Moonmaw Hollow? Ha. That lasts about as long as a fresh roll in a room full of wolves. The afternoon sun slanted through the bakery windows like it was trying to mind its own business. Marge was elbow-deep in a massive batch of honey-glazed twists when the front bell didn't just jingle, it clanged like someone had kicked it. Lord Barnaby Thicket-Whistle III swept in first, still damp from yesterday's mead bath, armor polished, badly, expression equal parts panic and paternal pride. Behind him, Arabella and Drusilla, not crying, not sulking, smiling. That was worse. Arabella wore a new dress, emerald silk, low neckline, her hair in perfect ringlets, like she'd spent the morning bargaining with woodland sprites. Drusilla had traded black lace for deep crimson velvet. Her eyes sparkled with the kind of glee usually reserved for successful hexes. Barnaby cleared his throat so dramatically the rafters shook. Marge, my dearest, most productive daughter. Marge didn't look up from twisting dough. Dad, sisters, you've got 5 seconds before I assume you're here to buy rolls and not start more nonsense. Barnaby spread his arms wide. We come in peace, and with opportunity. Arabella stepped forward, chin high, voice syrupy. We've reflected, dear sister, deeply, on our shortcomings. Drusilla nodded solemnly. And we've decided to support your union. Fully. Marge finally looked up. Wooden spoon dripping honey like a murder weapon. Support, right. And I'm the next high priestess of the moon goddess. Rafe appeared from the back room, shirt sleeves rolled, hair still faintly dusted with flour, carrying a tray of cooling twists. He set it down, crossed his arms, said nothing. But his eyes narrowed. Barnaby rushed on. The village elders are concerned. An alpha mating with a common baker? Scandalous. But if we present a united front... Arabella cut in smoothly. We've arranged a little demonstration. Tonight, full moon, village square. Drusilla smiled like a cat with cream on its whiskers. A compatibility ritual. Traditional. Binding. Very public. Marge snorted. You want me to do a werewolf mating dance in front of the whole village? In front of Mrs. Harrow and her gossip circle? Not a dance, Arabella corrected sweetly. A trial. There are 3 tasks, designed to prove you're worthy of Luna status. Rafe growled low. She doesn't need to prove anything. Barnaby waved frantic hands. It's symbolic, for appearances. If she succeeds, the elders bless the match. No more whispers, no more assassins, no more cursed turnip collectors at my door. Marge stared at her family, then at Rafe. You in on this? Rafe shook his head. First I'm hearing of it. She turned back to her sisters. What are the tasks? Arabella ticked them off on manicured fingers. 1. Strength of spirit. Carry the Alpha's mark through fire. 2. Wisdom of the pack. Solve a riddle set by the elders. 3. Heart of the moon. Share a kiss under the full moon that seals the bond, or breaks it. Drusilla added, almost gently, if you fail any, the bond dissolves. Fate reconsiders. And perhaps someone more suitable steps forward. Marge laughed. Short, sharp, dangerous. You two really think I'd back down from a little public humiliation? Arabella smiled wider. We think you'll try. And when you stumble, because no commoner can handle pack magic, we'll be there. Ready, willing, grateful. Rafe stepped forward, voice like gravel wrapped in velvet. She's not doing it. Marge put a hand on his arm, stopped him. I am. Rafe looked down at her, alarmed. You don't have to. I want to. She met his eyes, steady. If your pack and this village think I'm some charity case who lucked into a sniff test, they're wrong. I'll prove it. My way. She turned to her sisters. Tell the elders yes. Tonight, village square, full moon. Us bring snacks. I get hungry when I'm winning. Barnaby beamed like he'd just sold his soul and gotten a good price. Excellent. We'll prepare everything. Torches, ribbons, a nice podium for dramatic effect. He hustled out. Sisters followed, Arabella with a victorious swish, Drusilla with a final lingering smirk. The door closed. Silence. The badger chittered from the windowsill like it was taking bets. Rafe turned Marge to face him, hands gentle on her shoulders. You sure? Marge looked up, grinned, fierce. I've faced worse than fire and riddles. I've faced you trying to knead dough. Rafe huffed a laugh, pulled her close, forehead to forehead. If you get hurt, I won't. She poked his chest. But if I do, you owe me unlimited rolls for life. And no shedding on the couch. Deal. He kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her mouth, slow, deep, tasting like promise and panic. When they broke apart, Marge was breathing hard. Okay, now help me finish these twists. I'm stress baking until sundown. Rafe saluted, grabbed an apron, tied it around his massive frame like it was a napkin. The pack wandered in one by one, drawn by the tension like moths to flame. Thorn. We heard. We're coming. Moral support. Lila. And knives, just in case. Garrick grunted, held up a very sharp cleaver. Agnes shuffled over with her knitting. Made you a shawl, dearie. Fireproof thread. Mostly. Marge looked around at her ragtag army of wolves, one badger and one giant flour-dusted alpha. She laughed. Real, bright, unstoppable. Let's go win a mate trial, and maybe burn down the square while we're at it. Outside, the sun dipped lower. The moon waited, and in the village square, torches were already being lit. The night was young. The stakes were stupidly high, and Marge Thicket Whistle was about to remind everyone why you don't mess with a baker who's got backup, bad attitude, and the best damn cinnamon rolls in 3 counties. The moon hung fat and smug over Moonmaw Hollow, turning everything silver and stupid. Torches crackled in the village square, like they knew they were about to witness peak chaos. Villagers crammed shoulder to shoulder, some clutching pitchforks, just in case, others clutching stolen rolls from the bakery, priorities. A rickety wooden platform had been slapped together in the center. 3 stations, 3 ridiculous tasks, and one baker who looked ready to set the whole thing on fire herself. Marge strode into the square like she owned it, wearing her everyday apron over a clean-ish dress, hair tied back with a strip of cheesecloth, wooden spoon tucked into her belt like a dagger. The badger rode shotgun on her shoulder, nibbling a leftover twist like it was VIP seating. Rafe walked beside her, leather coat open, eyes glowing brighter than the torches. The pack flanked them like a furry honor guard. Thorn cracked his knuckles. Lila twirled a knife. Garrick carried a suspiciously large basket of emergency rolls. Agnes knitted furiously in the front row. Barnaby stood on the platform, arms wide, trying to look regal. Failed miserably. "Citizens of Moonmaw Hollow," he boomed. "Tonight we settle the question of fate. Or will the baker claim her alpha, or will tradition prevail?" The crowd murmured. Some cheered for Marge, mostly people who owed her tabs. Some booed, mostly people who'd been hexed by Drusilla. Arabella and Drusilla stood on either side of their father, smiling like they'd already won. First task, strength of spirit. Carry the Alpha's mark through fire. A narrow path of burning coals had been laid out, 10 feet of glowing orange hell. At the end, a small iron brand heating in the flames, shaped like a crescent moon with fangs. Pack tradition. Painful. Permanent. Sexy in a medieval torture way. Rafe growled low. "She doesn't need to—" Marge squeezed his arm. "Shut it, Rover. I got this." She stepped forward. The crowd hushed. An elder, wrinkled, one eye milky, voice like gravel in a blender, held up the brand. "Or take the mark. Walk the coals. Prove your spirit can bear the bite of the pack." Marge looked at the coals, then at Rafe. "Any last words before I possibly barbecue my feet?" Rafe's voice was rough. "Don't do it for them. Do it for you." Marge snorted. "Flattery. Cute. Hold my spoon." She handed the spoon to the badger, who clutched it like a tiny scepter. Then she kicked off her shoes, bare feet on cold dirt. Deep breath, smell of smoke, cinnamon from her apron, and Rafe's pine musk fear sweat. She stepped onto the coals. Hiss, sizzle, pain like stepping into lava wearing flip-flops. The crowd gasped. Marge didn't scream, didn't flinch, just walked, slow, steady, like she was strolling to the outhouse at midnight. Halfway across, the pain peaked. Tears stung her eyes. But she kept going. One foot, or then the other, muttering under her breath the whole time. Stupid coals, stupid tradition, stupid sisters, stupid hot werewolf making me do romantic suicide. She reached the end, stepped off onto blessed dirt, legs shaking, feet blackened and blistered. The elder approached with the brand. Rafe lunged forward. Marge held up a hand, stopped him. "Do it," she told the elder, voice steady. "Make it quick." The brand pressed to the inside of her left wrist. Sizzle, burning flesh, smell of scorched skin and iron. Marge hissed through her teeth, didn't pull away, didn't cry out. When the elder lifted the brand, the crescent and fang mark glowed silver for a heartbeat, then settled into angry red. The crowd erupted, cheers, gasps. Someone fainted, probably Barnaby. Marge looked down at the mark. Or then up at Rafe. He was across the coals in one leap, didn't even touch them, caught her as her knees buckled, lifted her like she weighed nothing. "You idiot," he whispered against her hair, voice cracking. "You beautiful, stubborn idiot." Marge managed a weak grin. "Told you, I got this." The elder cleared his throat. Task 1, passed. Arabella's smile slipped. Drusilla's eyes narrowed. Second task incoming. But right now, Rafe carried Marge to the side of the platform, set her down gently on a crate, kneeled in front of her, took her burned feet in his huge hands. Cool relief spread from his palms. Alpha healing trick. Pain eased. Blisters faded to pink. Marge watched him. Soft. Quiet. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "Yeah, I did." She touched the fresh mark on her wrist. Because if I'm keeping you, Furball, I'm keeping all of it. Marks, trials, badgers, the whole furry mess." Rafe looked up at her, eyes shining, not just orange glow, actual emotion. "I love you," he said. Simple. No growl, just truth. Marge blinked, then laughed, soft, surprised. Took you long enough to say it out loud. He kissed her burned wrist, gentle as moonlight. The crowd awed. Some threw rolls in celebration. The elder banged his staff. Task 2, Wisdom of the Pack. A scroll was unrolled, a riddle written in fancy script. Marge leaned on Rafe's shoulder, still barefoot, still marked, still winning. Hit me with it, she called. Let's see if your riddles are smarter than your sister's. Drusilla stepped forward, voice silky. I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have no body, but I come alive with the wind. What am I? Marge didn't even blink. An echo, the crowd murmured. Drusilla's smile froze. Correct, the elder grumbled. Arabella looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Marge grinned up at Rafe. 2 down, 1 to go. The moon climbed higher. The final task loomed. The kiss to seal or shatter the bond. And Marge? Marge was ready to kiss him so hard the moon goddess would need a cigarette after. But something in Drusilla's eyes said the sisters weren't done playing dirty yet. The square was dead quiet now. Even the torches seemed nervous, flames flickering sideways like they didn't want to watch. The moon sat fat and full overhead, judgy, glowing, clearly invested in the drama. Villagers held their collective breath. The pack stood in a loose semicircle, but tense as bowstrings. The badger had climbed onto Garrick's shoulder for a better view, still clutching Marge's wooden spoon like a royal scepter. 3rd task, Heart of the Moon. Share a kiss under the full moon that seals the bond, or shatters it. No pressure. The elder stepped forward one last time, scroll trembling slightly in his gnarled hands. This final trial requires true intent. The kiss must be given freely, without coercion, without doubt. If the bond is real, the moon will mark it. If not, he trailed off. Didn't need to finish. Everyone knew. Rafe turns gnome. Marge goes back to being the chunky baker who almost snagged an alpha. The sisters win by default. Arabella and Drusilla stood at the edge of the platform, smiles fixed, eyes glittering with anticipation. That Barnaby wrung his hand so hard his signet ring left dents. Marge, still barefoot, fresh brand on her wrist throbbing faintly, feet healed but tender, looked up at Rafe. He hadn't moved since he carried her off the coals, just stood there. Huge. Quiet. Eyes locked on her like she was the only thing in the world worth seeing. Marge tilted her head, gave him a small, crooked smile. You look like you're about to throw up, Rover. Rafe huffed a laugh, short, strained. Never been more terrified in my life. Big bad alpha scared of a kiss? Scared of losing you because of some stupid moon ritual. Marge reached up, cupped his jaw with one hand, gentle, steady. Thumb brushed the flower streak still on his cheek. Then don't lose me. She stepped closer. The crowd faded. The torches dimmed in her peripheral. Even the badger stopped chewing. Just them, moonlight pouring over them like spilled milk. Marge rose on her toes. Rafe bent down. Slow, careful, like he was afraid she'd vanish if he moved too fast. Their lips met. Not fireworks, not explosions, not some dramatic claiming bite. Soft, warm, tasting like cinnamon, smoke from the coals, and the tiniest hint of honey from the twists they'd baked earlier. Marge's hand slid to the back of his neck, fingers threading through his hair. Rafe's arms wrapped around her waist, gentle, reverent, like she was glass and wildfire at the same time. The kiss deepened. Not hungry, not desperate, just honest. A low hum started in the air, like distant thunder, but warmer. The brand on Marge's wrist flared silver white. At Rafe's chest glowed in the same place, matching crescent and fang, pulsing once, twice. The moon seemed to lean closer. Then, a soft pop of light. Not blinding. Just bright enough to make everyone blink. When the glow faded, the marks had settled, permanent, shimmering faintly under the skin like moonlight caught in ink. The elder cleared his throat, voice cracking with something like awe. The bond is sealed. The square exploded. Cheers, howls. Someone rang the village bell like it was New Year's. The pack surged forward, Thorn slapping Rafe on the back hard enough to stagger him, Lila whooping, Garrick actually smiling, terrifying, Agnes dabbing her eyes with her knitting. The badger chittered triumphantly and dropped the spoon. Marge pulled back just enough to breathe, forehead against Rafe's, but grinning like an idiot. Guess you're stuck with me now, furball. Rafe's voice was rough, thick with something that sounded dangerously close to tears. Best damn fate I ever got sniffed into. They kissed again, quick, laughing, because why not? Then reality crashed back in the form of two very stunned sisters. Arabella's mouth hung open. Drusilla's hands were clenched so tight her nails drew blood. Barnaby rushed forward, arms wide. My girls! My alpha son-in-law! My bakery empire is saved! Marge held up a hand, stopped him mid-hug. Not so fast, Dad. She turned to her sisters, looked them dead in the eye. You two set this up to humiliate me, to prove I didn't belong. She lifted her marked wrist. Oops. Arabella stammered. But we... Drusilla cut in. Voice low. You won. Fine. But don't think this means... Marge stepped closer. Voice calm. Deadly calm. Here's what it means. You two are welcome in my bakery anytime. You want rolls? Pay like everyone else. You want to hex someone? Do it somewhere that isn't my kitchen. And if you ever try to sabotage me, or him, again, I'll bake you into the next batch. Metaphorically, mostly. She smiled. Sweet as icing. Now go home. Sleep it off. And maybe, come help with tomorrow's rush. We could use the extra hands. Arabella blinked, looked at Drusilla, looked back at Marge. You're inviting us? I'm not forgiving you yet, but I'm not wasting family either. Drusilla studied her for a long moment, then, shockingly, nodded. Once. Small. Arabella sniffed, wiped her eyes, mascara disaster. Fine, but I get first pick of the day-olds. Marge snorted. Deal. Barnaby tried to hug everyone at once, failed spectacularly, ended up hugging the badger by mistake. The crowd started dispersing, laughing, chattering, already turning the night into legend. Rafe tugged Marge toward the edge of the square, away from torches, away from eyes, just them and moonlight. He pulled her into the shadows of an old oak, pressed her gently against the trunk, kissed her again. Slower this time. Deeper. Hands framing her face like she was treasure. When they broke apart, he whispered against her lips. Mine. Marge smiled, nipped his bottom lip. Yours. But don't get cocky. You still owe me a couch that doesn't shed. Rafe laughed. Low, happy, free. Anything you want, mate. They walked back toward the bakery, hand in hand. Or the pack trailing behind like a very large, very fluffy wedding party. The badger riding on Rafe's shoulder now, spoon still in its paws. Moonlight followed them the whole way. And somewhere up there, the moon goddess probably poured herself a drink and said, Finally. Took long enough. The full moon didn't just set the next morning. It slunk away like it knew the party was over, and it had done its job. Moonmaw Hollow woke up hungover on romance, sugar, and the faint smell of scorched coals. The village square still had bits of ribbon and one very confused chicken roosting on the podium. But the bakery? The bakery was already open. Because Marge Thicket Whistle doesn't do days off. Inside, the place looked different. Better. Chaos, but the good kind. But Rafe stood behind the counter in a black apron that said, Property of the Luna. Lila had embroidered it overnight, her idea of a wedding gift. He was piping icing with surprising competence, tongue poking out in concentration. The pack had claimed permanent stations, Thorn on bread, Lila on register, She still growled at hagglers, but now it was affectionate. Garrick silently restocking flour sacks, Agnes knitting tiny wolf-sized oven mitts for sale. The badger had its own perch on a high shelf, official mascot complete with a tiny collar tag that read, Pecan Enforcer. Marge moved through it all like she'd been born to run this circus. Fresh apron, marked wrist glinting under the morning light. A new silver crescent and fang pendant around her neck. Rafe had slipped it on her at dawn, or whispering, so everyone knows, like a shy teenager. The front bell jingled. Arabella and Drusilla walked in, hesitant. No dramatic entrances this time. Just two sisters carrying baskets of berries and herbs like peace offerings. Marge looked up from rolling dough, raised an eyebrow. "You're early. Rush doesn't start for 20 minutes. Arabella cleared her throat. "We thought we'd help, if that's still okay." Drusilla held up her basket. "Blackberries for the tarts, and sage for the savory rolls. No poison. Promise." Marge studied them for a long beat, then nodded toward the back. "Aprons are on the hook. Wash your hands, and if either of you burns anything, you're scrubbing the oven with a toothbrush." Arabella actually smiled. Small. Real. Drusilla gave a tiny nod. They moved to the sink. Quiet. Almost normal. Barnaby poked his head in next, carrying a ledger and looking suspiciously sober. "Daughter, son-in-law, I've drawn up the paperwork. Joint ownership of the bakery, pack alliance treaty, and a very reasonable dowry refund clause." Rafe cut him off gently. "Dad, we're good. No more selling daughters?" Barnaby blinked, then grinned. "Fair enough. I'll just invest in more turnips. Regular ones this time." He shuffled out before anyone could argue. The morning rush hit like a tidal wave. Villagers poured in, some for rolls, some for gossip, most for both. They stared at the marked Luna behind the counter, at the Alpha piping roses onto pastries like it was his calling, at the pack working in perfect growly harmony, at the two former mean girl sisters quietly measuring flour together. Old Man Harrow leaned over the counter. "So, you're really keeping the big one?" Marge slid him his usual 2 rolls. Extra icing. "Looks like it," Harrow cackled. "Good. Means more free security. Those wolves scare off the tax collectors." The day blurred into flour clouds, laughter, and the constant ding of the oven timer. By late afternoon, the place quieted. Only stragglers left. Marge flipped the closed sign, leaned against the doorframe, watched Rafe wipe down the last counter. He looked up, caught her staring. "What?" She smiled, slow, soft, the kind she used to save just for herself. "You're still covered in flour." He glanced down, grinned, walked over, towered over her like always. "You like it?" "I like you," she corrected. Simple. No snark. Just truth. Rafe's eyes softened. And he cupped her face with floury hands, left little white prints on her cheeks. "Good, because I'm not going anywhere." She rose on her toes, kissed him. Slow, sweet, tasting like the day's work and tomorrow's promise. When they pulled apart, the pack was watching from the kitchen doorway. Thorne gave a thumbs up. Lila wiped a sneaky tear. Garrick nodded once. Agnes held up a finished baby blanket. Way too soon, but sweet. The badger chittered from its shelf like it approved. Marge looked around at her ridiculous, perfect family. "All right, Mutts, clean up. Then we're eating, all of us. Family dinner, no exceptions." Rafe wrapped an arm around her waist, pulled her close. "Family dinner," he echoed. Voice low. Happy. Outside, the sun dipped low. The moon was already peeking over the horizon. Faint, patient, but waiting for its next shift. Inside, the bakery smelled like cinnamon, fresh starts, and zero regrets. Marge leaned her head against Rafe's chest, listened to his heartbeat. Strong, steady, hers. And somewhere the moon goddess raised a glass of mead and toasted herself. Because sometimes fate doesn't just sniff you out. Sometimes it hands you a rolling pin, a giant wolf, a pack of idiots, 2 snarky sisters, a greedy dad, and 1 very greedy badger, and says, "Go make chaos, and make it delicious." The end. But the bakery stays open forever, and the rolls? Still lethal.